Welcome to the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast, episode 4. I am Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Jordan Lehman. Jordan, how are you doing tonight?
Doing well. How about you?
I am fantastic. This is being recorded on a Wednesday, January 6th. We will have a coach interview here in the second part of our podcast that was recorded yesterday with Coach Redetzke from Durand. To lead into that, we'll kind of give you an overview of things that have happened here in the last week. We haven't had a lot of action, obviously, because we're just coming back from the New Year. Jordan, what are some things that have stuck out to you in Western Wisconsin sports here over the last 10 days or so?
Well, I guess talking most recently, I thought New Richmond come out with two quality wins in middle border play. But definitely, especially their win over Prescott, stuck out to me. Being at the game against Baldwin Woodville, I thought, to mention Baldwin Woodville as well, like the BW played really well. But New Richmond, coming in, I think they were 1-3 coming into the Prescott game. Hosted a Prescott team that was shooting the lights out. Had some young players playing really well, and put up a ton of points. I think me and you both saw last night that they played a real high pace, but I think that's what Prescott wants to do as well. So them going blow for blow with Prescott and then coming out with a win was impressive. Thought Baldwin Woodville played really well last night. It looked like a different team. I know me and you saw them at Ellsworth in their opener. And yeah, they look like a different team. Dylan Caro, their seniors, kind of hitting stride. And they've had some other pieces, freshman Colin Fritz, a couple other pieces that are starting to contribute consistently. So they're a team to watch out for. I think they're a team that can battle their way through the middle border to maybe finish in the top half. But it can't go overstated how good St. Croix Central's been. Obviously, they had a loss here against River Falls. River Falls walks out with maybe the best guard in Western Wisconsin, and then 2'6", 6'9" kids, and River Falls just maybe a different level. And so Central lost to them, but they just took care of business last night against a real good Prescott team. So until I'm proven otherwise, I think it's a battle for second in the middle border, but we'll see what happens. This Friday, Baldwin Woodville's got a chance to give Central all they can, and it's been fun to watch.
Yeah, as long as we're talking middle border, looking forward, all of the teams in the middle border, with the exception of New Richmond, are in the same regional in Division III. New Richmond's obviously going to play a lot of those big river teams, and that was one of the losses that they had was to River Falls, who is the best Division II team, or one of the best Division II teams in this area. Just kind of looking at that region in Division II, so it's broken up into 8 different regions, 4 different sections, and River Falls is matched with the Onalaskas, the New Richmonds, and the lacrosse schools, as well as some others like Rice Lake. I would assume Hudson's Division I. But at this point in time, River Falls and Onalaska look to be kind of the cream of the crop there. Both teams that are ranked, River Falls number 4, and Onalaska 6. So taking New Richmond out of that equation, because I think obviously New Richmond's going to compete in the middle border this year. But like you said, it's at this point, someone's got to convince you that it's not just a race for second. And New Richmond right now looks like the second best team in the conference, and they got absolutely destroyed by the Panthers. So, taking New Richmond out of the equation, focusing on the middle border and our region, there's 13 teams in it. And Central right now, to me, is got to be the favorite. And this would be the subsectional that right now is listed as an Amory game, but I think there's some debate as to whether these sectional semifinals are going to be held at host schools or neutral courts or whatever. So I'm looking at some of the other teams. Obviously, we have the middle border, and then it's the heart of the North. So it's basically all of those teams mesh together with, take some of the smaller heart of the North schools out. So, excuse me, Amory, Baldwin, Woodville, Ellsworth, Osceola, Prescott, St. Croix Central, and Somerset from the middle border. And then you have Barron, Bloomer, Hayward, Northwestern, St. Croix Falls, and Spooner from the heart of the North. Um, so, we've talked plenty about the middle border. Um, Central being the favorite in the middle border at this point, probably also the favorite in that subsection to come out. Somerset, 4-1 in conference, 10-2 overall. And I think they're a pretty strong team. They ended up coming back and beating Ellsworth last night. I know that was they were down 8 at half, but outscored them by 18 in the second half. And so they're going to be a team that is obviously going to be tough. They did have that loss to Prescott. Prescott, we've talked to Coach Johnson. We've talked a lot with each other about just their youth, and how you never know for certain which team is going to show up. Are there? Do you feel like it's those three in the middle border right now? Taking Nourishment out of it, Central, Somerset, and Prescott. How close do you think the Ellsworths and the Baldwin Woodvilles, the Amorys, the Osceolas are to that, top three in the conference?
Yeah. Starting with, I think to start with what makes St. Croix Central so good is their abundance of ability to score. And when I say that, I mean multiple players can go for over 15 points, like 15 plus, maybe 20 plus. And what that does is it never, puts pressure or hinges your success on one or even two players. And when Central has Pettit, who can go for 20, Seiler, who can go for 20, Hackbarth, who can go for 20, Hinsman, who can go for 20, and they've all proven it, depending on the teams that they play. It's, as a former head coach and yourself, game planning for that is nearly impossible, because you can take away Hackbarth's three-point ability, or you can take away Seiler's distributing ability, but it's always going to leave something else. And in saying that, Somerset is maybe the closest team to that, where they have probably three dudes who can hit the 20-point mark, and it's kind of like that makes sense. With Ortiz, with Cook, with Krybeck, and then Prescott. I haven't watched their tape. I've only watched a handful of their games. You watched more of them than I have, but I'm curious what's going to happen when Momlov either has an extremely good defender on him, or when he's maybe not feeling it, because he scores. He scores nearly every game at an elite clip, but it's like you've said, it's tough to know which team's going to show up, because I'm not sure if they have the supporting cast yet to make them a team that can go without Momlov at his best. And that's kind of the thing with Baldwin Woodville, with Ellsworth, that is kind of their Achilles heel, I think. And Baldwin Woodville maybe is inching ahead of Ellsworth in that manner. But just, what happens to Ellsworth if Mason Anderson isn't at his best? What happens to BW if Dylan Carroll isn't scoring 18, 15 or more? And we've seen BW have, the freshman Fritz, Cam Thompson, and Keegan Opsey step up. But how consistently that'll be, we'll see. And then with Ellsworth, Mason Anderson, we saw firsthand, he can absolutely take over. But is Janke going to be a scorer in his own right, even with Anderson on the floor? And then is there really anybody else on that Ellsworth squad that's going to step up? So yeah, I guess what's your take on maybe the biggest differentiating factors between Central and Prescott Somerset?
Well, I think that, like you mentioned, Central's just deeper and more talented. You know, Carson Hinsman is different. You know, the game against River Falls, he's controlling anything near the basket, um, and there's nobody in the middle border that's an answer for that. I mean, there's not kids in the heart of the north, or excuse me, in the big rivers that are an answer for that. And it's not that, you know, Carson Hinsman is a Division I football prospect. He's an enormous body, uh, but when you put Gabe Seiler on the floor with him and Jackson Pettit on the floor with him and Kelson Klin and Colin Hackbarth, and they have three guys that can come off the bench and score. Like, they have depth, they have talent. Um, so they can just play a different style of basketball. Uh, Ellsworth has Mason Anderson, Prescott has Jordan Malvlov, um, and I think, you know, right now they're 2 and 3 in the conference in scoring behind C.J. Campbell, and they're both elite scorers. Different, obviously. Malvlov is their primary ball handler and will get all of his baskets at the perimeter and get to the free throw line. And Mason Anderson could just bully people around. Um, but I think that's what separates those two teams from the rest of the pack, is that it's hard to find high school players that are just naturally gifted scorers. And we've seen Mason Anderson do it, you know, for a couple of years, but he's always had that ability. I mean, he was a role player with really, really good players in Motley, Flom, Benson, and he was still getting buckets. Um, and so I think you can say, well, what if they have off nights? And those guys will, but their off nights might be 18, 19 points. Whereas other leading scorers for teams on an off night might score 6. And I think that's what separates those two teams from the rest of the conference. Um, you know, Somerset's different in that they have a number of dudes that can score. Krybeck can hit threes in bunches, and I don't know that we've seen that as much this year as we probably thought after watching them last year. They are 10-2. Melvin Medina Ortiz is a fantastic basketball player. He's so much fun to watch, and Jackson Cook is almost the exact opposite of Melvin, in that he drives you crazy. He takes charges. He plays with this energy that's uncontrolled, where Melvin's super under control, and they're going to win basketball games. But you know, the losses that they've taken, will they win them, you know, second time around? And you know, we got to see Somerset at their best at Prescott, and it was blow for blow in the regional final last year. But I think there's, you know, right now a definite line. You know, talking to Coach Benoit after the game last night, it's like this is a process. But there's no doubt that when you have 5 guys in double figures and nobody else scoring, that you got to figure out a depth piece or a plan. And we saw that happened last night with Richmond kind of going on those runs when he was trying to get his starters a little bit of a break. And it's hard to stagger. You know, you can't stagger it with one guy. They got to find a 6th, a 7th, and 8th guy, not necessarily scorers, but just guys that can do a more in the minutes that they get. But what's interesting to me, and you know, talking to Coach Baumgart, and this is kind of a segue into the next part, is how does the middle border this year match up with the heart of the North? Because I think, you know, most people would agree that in the last handful of years, the middle border has been stronger, and we've seen that with who's been represented in the regional finals. It's been primarily middle border teams, with the occasional Northwestern sneaking in. Northwestern went to state a couple of years ago. Central is the class of the middle border. Northwestern right now is the best D3 team in the heart of the North, and Central beat the brakes off of them. So how do those teams compare when you add in that second level of teams in the Barons, the Spooners, and the St. Croix Falls, all who will be in that same region? How do you think the top half of the conferences match up? At this point in the season with a month and a half to go.
Yeah, it's a really good question, because I would agree that in years past, and I think a lot of the coaches in the Harder North, especially coaches that we know, might agree that there was a little bit of incongruity with just the ones, twos, and threes in each conference. The level of play that they were playing at. I'm not convinced right now that there's a lot separating the 2 through 5 in each conference respectively. And the reason is because I think that, I mean, even Barron lose last night to St. Croix Falls team that beat Baldwinville. But we witnessed firsthand, and talking with Coach Baumgard, they've got basketball players. They've got guys who are not only strong and tall and fast, but they've got guys who have kind of worked on their craft and become high level scorers. I think in the older Liberty, especially, a guy that can go for 30. He's proven that. Just to compare conferences, not to take regional play into consideration, Cameron is a team with 2 players that are as talented as any in Northwest Wisconsin, in Austin Weiss, and then their point guard. His name escapes me right now, but I think his first name is Richie. But
is it Richie Murphy? Murphy?
Yep, Murphy. And I haven't watched Northwestern. I think you maybe watched the Northwestern St. Louis Central game. And I am just kind of talking about 2 through 5, 2 through 4, because I mean, Central already, proved that they are, maybe the better team than Northwestern right now. And I'm not sure what Northwestern is going to be able to do to chip away at that. But, the edge that the middle borders had in regional play, I wouldn't be surprised to see Spooner or a Barron or a St. Croix Falls knock off a middle border team in this year's playoff.
Yeah, and I think when you're talking about St. Croix Falls beating Barron, St. Croix Falls has played Somerset, got beat by 20, beat Baldwin-Woodville by 5 in overtime. They just got that Oi kid back. He debuted last night. And so he's a kid that we saw 2 years ago on the JV as a freshman, right? He's a junior this year. As a freshman, and it was like, that kid can play. And I think he actually played a little bit of varsity. Strong, well-built kid. And he had 15 in a 5-point win against Barron. So I think St. Croix Falls is a different team when he's playing. It's not a 20-point loss to Somerset. So I think they might end up, despite having an early season loss to Northwestern by 20, despite having an early season close loss to Spooner in conference, they might through the rest of the year, if they can stay healthy and have their dudes, they might be the team that sneaks up up the conference standings and is the class of the heart of the North, along with Northwestern and Barron, and not seen necessarily as maybe a step below them. Obviously Cameron is leading that conference right now, and they're going to be a problem for that whatever region they get matched up with in D4. Because you look at those teams, and Spring Valley I think is okay after beating Durand. But I don't know that there's a lot of really, really strong teams in their region either. So There's a lot of good stuff happening, obviously, in the middle border and the heart of the North. And you look for the season to progress to get answers to questions in a typical year. And this year, you see answers sometimes, but that only leads to more questions, if that makes sense, because you don't expect to see the box score that you saw, and then you're trying to figure out, was everybody there? Prescott doesn't have Walker Lenz, and he was there. What I would assume would be a guy that was going to start and be relied on to get double figures every night. And so how does that change as the season progresses? Because you're going to have guys get hurt. And if you take any one dude off of any of these teams we've talked about, the complexion of their whole season changes. If there's guys that are out that we're not overly aware of that come back and all of a sudden start making a big impact, that changes things too. We've watched a lot of Baldwin Woodville sports over the last handful of years, and a guy that probably could help them a little bit is their JV point guard, and he got hurt. Could he offer some depth, for that squad? Would he change the outcome of last night's game? Probably not. But going forward, I mean, every team is probably going to have a guy that they didn't have on one night or did have on another night. We talk about Central losing River Falls. Colin Hackbarth wasn't in the gym. He's had 30. He's a guy that can just kind of start stroking it all of a sudden, and it's like, oh, Hackbarth's got 15. And so that's something that it's just, the more you watch, the more you try to get an idea, and then you're surprised by something, and you just, that's why they roll it out there, because anything can happen on any given night.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the atmosphere in the gym being obviously very unique this year, a lot quieter, a lot more predicated on maybe the bench mob and the JV and C team players and how they cheer. It'll be really interesting to see, coming down the stretch, the communication of coaches to players and how articulate they can be, and how strategic they can get. Because we talk with, Coach Sargent from Clear Lake, and Clear Lake right now is the class of the Lakeland. I mean, they just beat a Luck team that was, has been in the top of the Lakeland and lost a lot, but they were still competing well this year. They just beat Luck by 32 last night, or this week at least. So Clear Lake's doing really well. And we were talking to their coach, and he said, when they started to get really good, he had to learn how to kind of transfer his information to the point guard in practice so that the point guard could be the coach on the floor, because you can't communicate in a regional final when there's a couple thousand fans in the seats. This year, it'll be really interesting because we might see regional finals or even just really competitive conference games where the coach, Nick Johnson and Prescott, Coach Randy Jordan at St. Clair Central, they're able to call things out and communicate at a level that they've never been able to in those games. I mean, I listened to Aaron Rodgers talk about that even in the NFL, and how right now he's able to communicate everything he wants, and it's leading to a lot more success because he can talk to his receivers, he can talk to his O-line. But that's just to say, like, that the unique experience this year of playing with limited fans. I think there's going to be some coaches, some kind of wise, experienced coaches that might, make a difference coming down the stretch. It'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. So, quick recap of just teams in our area. The Wiz Sports coaches poll comes out every week. It was updated yesterday. Looking at Division II, we have River Falls at 4 and Onalaska at 6. We mentioned those two teams earlier. In Division III, Wisconsin Dells is not really Western Wisconsin, but they end up in our sectional. They're number 5 at 5-0, and Altoona number 8. They would be in the southern half of our sectional, and then St. Clair Central's number 6. Looking at Division IV, Cameron, as we mentioned, is up there ranked at number 4. Fall Creek is a team that's had some impressive wins. Right now they're 8-2. They're at 8. And then Edgar, who's not really West Wisconsin, but ends up sometimes coming this way, number 9. And Aquinas is 10. At Division 5, really the only team in this area. I mean, there's going south or going further east, you'll have teams, but Clear Lake is ranked number 6. So those are all teams that we've talked about over the last handful of weeks. Looking at the Dun St. Croix, because we will talk to Coach Redetzke here in a little bit. They were ranked, I believe, higher. They were ranked at 8th, and they were knocked out of the poll after getting beat by Spring Valley. So they're currently 5-1, and they would be a Division 4 team as well. So the Dun St. Croix, it's been interesting because there's, the Durands, the Mondovis, the Glenwoods, the Boycevilles are all very much in the area of these middle border teams. So there is some crossover as far as when those two teams or teams from each conference will play. But Durand right now sitting at 5-1 after beating Regis last night, who's a tough team. Prescott beat them earlier. Altoona beat them earlier. But that's a good win after kind of a night that they struggled with Spring Valley earlier last week.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some of the playoff battles between some of the Dun St. Croix teams and middle border teams, because of enrollment disparities, we won't see that probably ever again. But I mean, we had firsthand experience last year going to Durand's gym and seeing the level of basketball they play. They're a team that I think we'll have to Coach Redetzke, but I would expect their experience in last year's playoffs to pay off, because they return their top 3 contributors this year. And so I would look for them to definitely be a team that continues to win games in Dun St. Croix. I think they expect to repeat. I would expect that that's Coach Redetzke's goal and their players' goal as conference champs. And then to, push past the regional final. I know that they were in the sectional semi or sectional final 3 years ago, our first year coaching. And so that's a place that Coach Redetzke's been. And I think that they have the experience and talent to probably make a push.
Yeah, I think that's obviously going to be their expectation. Looking forward just quickly here at some games coming up. Tomorrow night, the Somerset Spartans travel to New Richmond. I think that'll be a pretty good one as far as, what team are we going to see going into that big gym? Because New Richmond's a huge gym, and it's going to be relatively empty. So I'm looking forward to that one. Baldwin Woodville will travel to St. Croix Central on Friday night. Obviously, we have that interest in kids that we've coached and see how they handle that press. Are there any other games that are on your radar in the next couple days?
To be honest, I'm not sure when River Falls plays next, but talking to Coach Campbell earlier this season, I think there's a lot of respect amongst coaches and amongst programs in the Big Rivers, and River Falls this is the second year where the expectations are very high for those kids, but I think that's kind of maybe put a target on their back, and obviously Memorial's already knocked them off. It'll be interesting to see if the Big Rivers becomes kind of like a Big Ten, where the conference champ might have 2, 3, 4 losses, or if River Falls starts to pull away, because they have things that other teams simply do not have in their length, in their height, in their skill at the one. But honestly, every game that River Falls plays, I'm kind of keyed in to look at the box score, look at obviously the final score and see what they're able to do, because the Chippewa Falls, I know they just beat Eau Claire North, and Eau Claire North lost Dalton Banks graduation, but Menominee, Coach Campbell talked highly of Menominee, and they already beat them. But really, any number of teams in that conference have proven to be competitive year in and year out. And yeah, I'm excited to watch River Falls continue to compete, especially with the expectations that they have.
So you mentioned, who do they play? Right now, Hudson leads the conference. I think they're 3-1. 3-2. So they have the most wins. They're rated first or shown first on the West Sports standings. Chippewa Falls and River Falls are both 2-1. And then there's Menominee, who's just played more games. They're 3-3. River Falls' next 3 games are Friday night at Menominee, next Monday night at Hudson, and then next Friday night home against Chippewa. So you're going to have some answers to those questions that you asked, because if they go 3-0, they're 5-1, and there's other teams that are 2-loss teams, but Hudson will have 3 losses. If they don't go 3-0, it's going to be just a mess where you could have as many as 4 or 5 2-loss teams all right there at the top. So that'll be very interesting. I know you were busy on that day that they played Central, but Central got up early, and it took probably an 8 to 10 minute stretch where Zach Johnson just didn't look like he belonged on a high school floor for River Falls to kind of push themselves into the lead. And then it was a relatively even game. I think the River Falls, it was up as much as 18, but then the lead would get down to about 10. And it never felt uncomfortable from a River Falls perspective. But at the same time, it never really felt like they could deliver that final crushing blow. And I think, as an elite team, you look to separate yourselves from other teams by doing that. And they didn't. And that's more of a credit to the St. Croix Central Panthers than it is a shot at River Falls, because obviously River Falls beat them. But those 2 teams looked like really, really good teams. And even when they talked to Zach Johnson after the game, it was clear that his goal is, we're going to play in the Kohl Center. And it was neat to hear that confidence from a high school kid. But at the same time, it was kind of like you know what I mean? And so that they've got their eyes on the bigger prize than just turn around and repeating in the big rivers. Because they did win the big rivers last year, right? Or was it 2 years ago that they won it? Anyway,
They won it 2 years ago.
Yeah, they got their eyes on bigger things, and I think St. Croix Central has their eyes on big things too. And obviously, we say the Kohl Center because that's in our mind where the season ends, and that might not be where the high school season ends this year. But at any rate, I mean, it's really neat to have teams in this area, and you can throw Turtle Lake in that mix. You can throw a number of teams in that mix where them saying we want to make it to Madison, and realistically having that shot. And I think that hasn't always been the case, but this year it certainly is the case.
Yeah. This goes on. I mean, Clear Lake. I think Durand, St. Croix. Yeah, the list goes on. It'll be fun to see, and it starts with simple, basic conference games, and it'll be fun to watch these next couple weeks as we get a lot of answers to these questions. But like you said, they will create more and more questions, most likely. And yeah, it's exciting. It's exciting to look forward to, and it'll be exciting to watch.
What we'll do now is we will talk to Coach Redetzke of the Durand Panthers, and we'll get an update on what's going on in the Dun St. Croix. All right, thank you for joining us today. This is the Western Wisconsin Sports Podcast. I'm Jeremy Nygaard, joined by Jordan Lehman, and we are also joined by Durand basketball coach Justin Redetzke. Coach Redetzke, how are you doing tonight?
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Obviously, the goal of our podcast here is to keep people in touch with what's happening in Western Wisconsin, and obviously, Durand is a little bit further east, but we want to try to spread out and talk to as many people as we can about the state of our area, and obviously with Durand being part of the Dun St. Croix, formerly of the Middle Border, we want to give credit to the Durand Panthers, because you've had a lot of success there over the last few years. So I'll turn it over to Jordan to ask some questions here, and then I'll jump in here shortly.
Yeah, Coach, thanks for being here. Just wanted to start out. How are things with Durand basketball right now for you guys?
Not too bad. We're starting out. We had some good, tough competition in non-conference play. Nice win over Fall Creek the other night. Who was both, we were both ranked there for a little while. I haven't checked what rankings are at right now, but we took one on the chin though against Spring Valley the other night, but didn't shoot very well, and Spring Valley shot the lights out, and that'll happen once in a while. But no, not too bad. I like where we're at. We've been lucky to have a pretty steady practice schedule for our varsity guys with everything going on. We came in a little late with most of our guys from football being quarantined, but then we've been pretty lucky to have most of the guys there.
So you said with football being quarantined, what other COVID adjustments have you guys had to deal with? Has there been anything real drastic thus far?
Well, our very first practice, we had a C-team kid ended up having it, and that whole gym got shut down. So the very first practice, I actually split our guys right away. So there wasn't like a true tryout period for either team. It was just, we're splitting and keeping you guys separate. And it actually worked out for us because that whole gym, then there was like 12 guys in that gym got shut down for the 2 weeks. And then I was able to keep going with the crew I had. So those type of things. We're also sending 2 buses a lot on road games, so keeping the varsity separate from the JVC team, so there's no, close contact on the bus that way. So at least if one group's out for 14 days, you can keep 2 levels going or 1 level going at some point.
Did you have a lot of multi-sport athletes, like a lot of football guys that you have playing basketball?
Yeah, there's quite a few, because right away it was probably 7 of my varsity guys were late to the party when, to get in there for practice and stuff. So yeah, there's quite a few that do our multiple sport athletes. Our schools our size, you kind of have to be, to have a football team, have a baseball team, you got to have guys playing multiple sports. So
You've got quite a few players returning from last year, a lot of guys that, scored a lot for you, good rebounders. What were the expectations for you and for your kids coming into the season?
Well, we won conference last year, made it to regional final game. So knowing that we had most of our guys returning, I think everybody's kind of had that in the back of their mind that that's what they, want to strive for that or improve upon that. We know that there's some good teams in our conference and there's some good teams in our regionals. So we know it's not just going to come to us. We got to go out and earn it. It's been just a different off season though. You haven't had those summer, the summer league stuff and everything to just get your feet wet, get those new guys that are on varsity, get them going, just to see them. So it's been really a unique year that way. You haven't had a lot of the non-conference, didn't have a scrimmage right away to start the year. So you haven't got to see some of the guys and see the rotation. And when we're playing some pretty competitive non-conference games right away, it's been a struggle that way. But, just keep seeing what these guys got to offer.
Right. Is this a group that you saw having the success that they would have when they were younger? Is this a group that came up together and played well together, or has it kind of been a surprise?
Yeah, this group actually, these like Simon Bauer and Gunnar Hurlbert has kind of played up with some of these guys for a while, even in youth. If they were short, my senior group was kind of just those 6 or so, 6, 7 guys playing, and they would bring up some of them other guys, Simon and Gunnar, to play in some tournaments when they were available. So they've kind of played together for quite a while, and you could see that the good chemistry and the good nucleus of those guys.
Right. Having some juniors, some seniors, who's kind of stepped up as the leader, or maybe a couple leaders for you these past couple years?
I look at Caden Berger being a pretty good leader for us. Like the Fall Creek game's a good example where, he kind of stepped up and took a scoring role on that night, got off to hitting a couple outside shots. I got some confidence going, and then he's just a big rebounder, big vocal guy. I had his brother played for me a few years back too, and I don't know if there's something with that too. They're just around the game more, and they see that his brother was a good leader, just a hard worker, and he was always around at the games and stuff too. So it kind of trickled down to him, I think, a little bit, and he's really stepped up that way. Simon Bauer, just being our point guard, is just a natural leader just by the way he plays. He's a fun guy to watch play. If you haven't seen us play and seen him working and hustling and the assists, the steals, the rebounds, last year he was like a rebound shy of a triple-double as a 5'8" point guard, and 5'8" might be stretching it for him, but he's really an impressive player that way and gets after it. And he's just fun to watch.
I know growing up for me, being a fan of basketball around here, I have relatives in Durand, and Durand basketball always has a tradition of excellence, both with boys and girls. Is that something that's kind of palpable being in the community? And has that been something that's been kind of pressure felt for you being a coach in Durand?
The girls have usually taken the big spotlight from the guys when it comes to basketball. They've just had the nonstop tradition and going to state and all that kind of stuff a few times in recent years. So they take some of the pressure off from the boys program, but it's been fun. When I took over, we had a really good year the first year, then we had a down couple of years, but we've kind of built it back and had a pretty good tradition as far as competing for conference year in and year out. It's been something I think with getting our youth program on board and seeing them, work on our players, work on their shot, work on their fundamentals, and it's consistent. When I first got in there, it wasn't consistent. Some groups are doing one thing, some groups are doing another, and we've got it pretty consistent. Now you throw this year in there, but besides that, it's been pretty consistent, and it goes a long ways. We've got numbers now. We have kids having fun doing it. We got our numbers up. And in boys, boys basketball, you don't know that seventh grader that's, 5 feet is going to be 6'5" when he's a junior or senior. So it's one of those that you keep those kids out, you keep them into it and working. And I don't necessarily feel the stress from it. You're always going to have, some stress with it. And when you have a lot of numbers, kids not getting as much playing time and all that, but we just stress to just work for it and take what's there. And when your opportunity comes to get after it, and it's been a good thing so far and been a lot of fun.
I know growing up watching Baldwin Woodville play Durand, both at Baldwin and in Durand, the atmosphere in Durand's gym can be one of the most fun that I've been a part of. Not having maybe the same amount of fans this year, have the kids that kind of seen that make a difference, like not having the student section right on top of you, and just the way that the bleachers kind of pound the court. Has that made a difference this year?
Yeah, it definitely has. The size of like Durand and their gyms, like everything's going bigger now, and I love those old gyms and the atmosphere they create, especially our size school. You don't need to have when New Richmond got their new gym and we were playing up there, it was like there was 10 people on the one side of that whole huge bleacher. It's doesn't create the big atmosphere like that does. You can put 300 people in a little Durand gym and it can get loud and exciting and it's a lot of fun there. And this year's been really tough when it comes to just that extra, home court advantage, or even on the road when you're battling another team's opposing fans and the atmosphere it creates. We try to get after our guys and the bench guys to really get into it, but it's tough. It is tough. It has taken some of the passion, if you want to say, out of it, just because and just wearing the mask and no facial expression and that emotion that brings, you don't think about it, until now we're wearing them. It's like, man, you can't see any facial expression, anything. And it does. It's been a little tough to start the year. I would admit that.
Now, did you coach when Durand was in the middle border as well?
I coached 3 years of JV, and then I think it was 2 years varsity before we switched to the Dunn St. Croix. So we my first year of this varsity was 2013, and we actually won the conference that year. Took took out Nick Johnson and Prescott, just rub that in a little bit. But then he let me have it the next year. So then we fell off, we had kind of a down year that year returning, but then we did switch with St. Croix Central and going to the Dun St. Croix.
Did you take over right when Harold retired? Did you coach with Harold or not?
Nope. Tony Hansen was there for probably a 4-year stretch because I coached under him for 2 to 3 years, and he was there a year or two before me.
Okay.
I know that and Nygaard can probably speak to this, that there's some pretty good rivalries that were in the middle border for Durand. I know Baldwin, for one, was I competed against Durand. Was that 2013 team? Was that Minturn and Weber?
Yep.
So I had the privilege. Yeah. I had the privilege of getting beaten up by them for 12 years. So they were always super competitive, and just playing in Durand, like I spoke to earlier, you feel like every single person that's a Durand fan does not like you. What's it been like kind of building up new rivalries in the Dun St. Croix, and who kind of stands out on your schedule now as teams that it feels kind of extra good to beat?
And we have tried to keep the Baldwin matchup going. Barry Terpstra is our athletic director. He's from Baldwin that way too. So they try to keep that going. This year, obviously, with our adjustment to our schedule, they took some of those off. And Prescott's been one we've kept on to. St. Croix Central is another one that, we took off this year. Kind of lost all the middle border matchups, it seems like, this year. But in our new conference that way, if you look at it that way, Elk Mound's been one that we battled with. Right when we came in, they had a nice team. And we were trying to see what we could do in the new conference, and we were trying to battle those guys. And it's always kind of seemed like, we split with them like every year, that they've been a nice matchup for us. Colfax again, Spring Valley. It seemed for a while there, they'd always beat us at our place, and then we'd always beat them at their place. And they've been a fun matchup to go against. Bossart there does a great job. Mondovi, obviously, that was one, being so close. That was always a non-conference game before that we always, both schools have that tradition and that passion, and it's been a rivalry that's gone back forever. And now we're in the same conference and get to play each other twice. So there's even more passion there. Always a packed house when Mondovi and Durand were playing. So that's been a nice rivalry too. Besides that, some of the other conference games, not as much passion. The Elmwood Plum City is too, just because people are so close. They live so close. They work, with each other and everything too. So it does add a little bit to the game, to the matchups. But I think that's more like adults than it is the kids, and you get that sometimes too, where the adults make it more of a rivalry than some of the kids do. But other than that, like our non-conference, we're kind of trying to get some of the schools down, like the Whitehalls, the Melmans, that conference over there, just because that's where we've shifted for our regional and everything too.
That's what I was going to ask. We talked to Coach Baumgart of Barron, and he said, when he puts his schedule together, and as the athletic director, he has a lot of pull with that, but he said he tries to get all the regional teams on his schedule.
Yeah.
That was something that I pushed our AD to do a little bit too, knowing that we were going to see so many Heart of the North teams. Is that something that you've tried to do? Obviously this year you can kind of throw out the window, but is that something that you attempt to do when you are looking at scheduling conference or non-conference opponents?
Yeah, we definitely do. I like our matchups though, like I said, like keeping Baldwin on there and Prescott and those teams. But it's hard. Then you go to a seating meeting and the other schools are looking at those teams like they don't know anything about them anyway. So it doesn't matter if you beat them or lost to a close game. It doesn't matter. So trying to get some of those head-to-head matchups when you go into those meetings is, it's just easier to prove your point or whatever you want to say. So it is something we have. I think next year we're going to go to a Whitehall Classic. I think Whitehall and actually McDonald's coming down for that. But they're trying to pull like a Luther or somebody like that, an Aquinas into that tournament just so we can get a matchup against them.
Are you curious at all? I know they're going to try to do more electronic seating. Are you curious at all how a game against a Prescott will factor in? I mean, I think back to last year, you guys were a really good team. We came into a really full gym and played one of our best games of the year. And to me, going to Durand was a really good win on our resume. We go into the seating meeting, and it doesn't really, like you mentioned, because they're not in your region, it doesn't really matter a whole lot. Do you are you curious? Do you think or about that? Like, how does a loss or a close loss to a bigger school, or a good win against a smaller school, or a close loss to are you curious at all how that's going to impact things?
Yeah, and I really think it should. If you have a close game against a nice team, like, and especially like we went to St. Croix Central, we played you guys, and we battled both teams. We lost both those games, but now we take 2 losses, and everybody looks at that on your record. At the end of the day, they're looking down the thing, and they see your record. Well, those are 2 losses. Well, those are pretty good teams, and if you rank them a little bit, and I'm curious how that ranking will work. I would rather lose a couple games and be battle tested than play a few teams below us and get handed nice wins. But are we tested then when the playoffs come? That's what I would worry about. So I'd rather, especially if it ranks that way, I want to keep the good teams on our schedule.
Was it an overtime game against Central last year that you guys lost?
Yeah, I believe it was. It was one we got down like 15 to almost 20 right off the bat, and then we battled back, and I think it did go to overtime. I'll let you say that.
Because you've obviously, I'm sure you've seen what they've been doing this year.
Yeah.
I'm really curious because I know that this year there's going to be, the way it sounds is that it's going to be kind of, they're going to use it as the electronic thing as kind of a test run.
Yeah.
Did you see there was just recently, Travis Wilson tweeted out that it sounds like sectional semis are going to be hosted by the higher seed.
Oh, really?
So seeding could really make a big difference. I mean, not that it didn't make a difference before, but you look at it in our region anyway. It's like if you were the 1 seed, you were going to host through the regional. If you were the 2 seed, you were going to host through the regional. But now that 1 versus 2 is really going to be a big deal if it's a sectional semi game. So have you looked at your region? Has it changed at all coming into this year?
Not a lot's changed. I think EPC joined and someone else was out, but a lot of those teams are all back and looking pretty good. So it'll be a pretty tough one. That's interesting that it's going that way. Is it just because there won't be as many fans and stuff anyway, so you don't need the big gyms?
Oh, well, I think it was a teaser because it'll be on the WSN podcast. But I think the idea is that there's not a lot of schools that want to welcome in fan bases and players into because you'd be taking in 2 entirely new schools.
Yeah.
Where I almost think it's an opportunity to make some money. There's some gate to be made there. The WI takes a majority of it, but there's a chance to make a little bit of money that there might be some schools that look at it as a way to bring some revenue in. So
yeah, but I wonder how many fans they'll allow, because once WIA takes their cut and then you pay out all your workers, it's probably not.
But they charged, I guess I'm not positive about football, but the volleyball, there was the $5 fee. Like the WI is going to get their money.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes, what you allow. But at the same time, I think when you're hosting your own players and hosting your own families, you're trying to protect your players and your families.
Yeah.
If you're welcoming in 2 communities that you're sending home right afterwards, is there going to just be like well, we don't really care what you do while you're here, just get the heck out of here and don't infect any of our people. So it's an interesting thing because that really changes the complexion of the sectional semis a lot. So
I think of like if Durand, like for Durand, for example, like if they were to stick with, home or higher seed hosts, like that's, and they let fans in, like I don't know, it probably wouldn't be a full gym, but even a gym half full in Durand is loud. Like I wanted to bring this up earlier. Nygaard, because you have a great Durand-Baldwin rivalry story, and I'm not sure if Coach Redetzke's heard it, but talk a little bit about your senior year and what happened with kind of the competition between you guys and their fans traveling to our place.
Well, so there's two stories. One was my junior year, so Weisenbeck's senior year. We were supposed to play them. I think it was the first round of the playoffs, and we hosted for whatever reason. And the doors were going to open at a certain time, and the whole Durand student body left school early and drove to Baldwin. So when I get out of my 8th hour class at 3:05 and I'm walking down the halls, there's a line of kids looped around our gym sitting in the hallway. And so it was like, what's going on here? We don't play for 3 more hours. And there's a whole slew of Durand fans just in our building. We ended up, I think we went into overtime that game. Yeah, and I always remind Nick of the story because I had a little fast break and showed him a pump fake trying to get him off the ground, and he didn't bite. And we still had our gym or our stage at the end of the court. And so after I pump faked him, I probably gave him another one just to try to get him up in the air. I realized this isn't going to work to my advantage. And so I just kind of tossed one up and watched him hit it against the curtain. And our curtain wasn't, your curtain is a little more stable. Ours was an actual curtain, and it hits it so hard that it was like you throw a stone into still water, and the whole curtain ripples. So Nick and I still talk about that occasionally. And then 2 years after that, have you heard that? Did he tell you that story ever?
No, but I bet he rubs that into you.
Well, yeah. I mean, we go back and forth.
Yeah.
And then 2 years after that, in the Durand gym, so it would have been Zach Campbell's senior year, Zach had a really good game, probably his best offensive game as a high school player. And we had brought a lot of students there. Well, our students wouldn't sit down. And whoever was the security for the Durand gym, told them to sit down. And one of the kids is like, you can't tell us to sit down. We're standing in he points to the opposing students part of the gym. He's like, we can sit here. And then they come back with another security guy and kick the whole student section out of the gym.
No way.
And it had got, in the meantime, the game had kind of got out of hand. Zach made a bunch of shots. He ended up scoring 40 that night and got his full offer from St. Cloud the next day. But on the way out of the gym, one of the kids, instead of exiting the gym as he should, and there's probably 2 minutes left, the game is now double digits, he decides he's going to take a victory lap around the gym. And so he runs towards the stage and then, past the Durand bench. And when he gets past the Baldwin's bench, one of the players' brothers was sitting next to our bench. And he sticks out his foot and trips the kid. And he goes sliding across the gym. And there's people our players and there's fans, and it was a mess, but holy smokes, is that a memorable one.
Yeah.
And it's those were the types of things, and we talked to when coaches as players or whoever, what are your best memories as a player? And it always has to do with the amount of fans. Mm-hmm. Winning in a gym. I think when Lehman asked me my favorite memories, it was playing in a packed Somerset gym, playing in a playoff game in a packed River Falls gym when their bleachers didn't reach the floor, and all of the memories of being in Durand, and they used to do the warm up the bus and the where's the referee, and some of those things were the worst things to deal with as players, but it was, in hindsight, it's God dang, I wish I still did that.
Yeah.
And I know we talk about those things as adults, it was 20 years ago, and we remember that.
No, they really get after, I'm all about the sportsmanship and everything, but there's some cheers, it's you gotta let some stuff go and let the kids be kids, and as a player, I love that. I love that when they would ride you and get after you and just made you play harder, I think, too. When the opposing team was getting after you or giving you the business a little bit, you wanted to prove them wrong. You wanted to quiet them up, by playing better. And sometimes I think you can't say this or you can't do that cheer. It's like, well, come on, let the kids.
Did you get to witness the where is the referee, where's the winning team, where's the losing team?
No, I haven't seen that one.
So it would be late in the game, and it was done really well by the students because they would wait until it got really quiet, which it doesn't happen very often, but it would get quiet and one person would yell out, would they start with the scoreboard or where is the referee?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the student section would respond by pointing. And so they'd go referee, winning team, or scoreboard, referee. Yeah, where is the scoreboard? Where is the referee? Where is the winning team? Where is the losing team? And then they would start that chant. And it was deflating as a player getting beat. Like you knew it was coming. You tried to avoid it. It starts and you're like, oh, you might as well just end the game. It's over.
Yeah.
And that was only a Durand thing. I never heard it anywhere else. Never done that well if I did. But holy smokes, then they'd start to warm up the bus chant. And it's like, just get us out of here before they start throwing things at us.
Oh, that's awesome.
So, yeah, it was, for me, it was always a great place to play. It was a phenomenal place to win, and it was the worst place to lose. And even as a coach, it's like, my first year coaching, we lost, and it sucked. And winning last year was like, that's a one that I've wanted for a long time.
Yeah.
My senior year, we did win at home or win at your place, but every other time it's like Joe Berger dunking on us.
Yeah.
Nick, doing whatever Nick wants. And you never got to enjoy any of that. That's too bad.
No, I don't remember that one.
You know what you do get to enjoy? You get to enjoy walking by the balls in the trophy case, the lots of conference champs, because they ended up beating Osceola, I want to say, in 2000 to make it to state. And then Osceola beat them the next year.
Yeah.
And then we had an opportunity the following season and got tripped up. A lot of fun, and I hope that you get to experience that atmosphere again before the end of the season, where you can fill them up. Because even if other fans aren't there, a gym full of crazy Durand fans, that's scary.
Yeah. I know. I'd love to see it where even the girls team could go on the stage. They're around each other anyway. Like the boys could do the same for the girls and just get up on the stage away from everybody and cheer them on, just to have some kind of cheer in there, some emotion in there.
Because Spring Valley allowed our boys went to Spring Valley and allowed parents in Spring Valley. Does your conference have a deal?
For relatives, basically, it has to be relatives of each player, so they can all have 4. Now Colfax has changed it to 2. They only allow 2 at their place, so that's kind of been what it's been so far. And some other conferences are just saying 4 people. It doesn't matter if it's in your household or whatever it is. And some have only your household people.
Yeah. And the middle border for the most part is just home fans, not road fans.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we've only been, tonight's our first, Tuesday. This is, I don't know when it's up, but it's Tuesday night. We have our first home game tonight.
Oh, really?
But most parents were able to go, I think, to Turtle Lake when our boys went there, and went to Spring Valley last week. Otherwise, they've been watching the live stream. So
that has been this year with a lot of the live stream stuff, but it makes it tough, and then games are getting dropped, games are getting live again. I did see on WIS Sports, they have it where you can click on the stream that side now too. That helps. You can watch some games.
So that's how we've been keeping busy and getting our basketball filled. We've just been sitting up in the box talking about basketball or live streaming. So,
nice.
Well, my time's running out here, so I want to thank you again. Wish you luck on your season. Obviously, as someone who hated Durand and then in college lived with 3 Durand people, it's always one of those frenemies types things. So.
That's the best.
And not being in the middle border too, it's the rivalry is still there for me. It's just, it's different. So I always like to check up and see how the Panthers are doing. And,
Nice.
What's that?
Said we'll keep an eye on us.
Oh, we certainly will. That's our intention here. So good luck tonight. Good luck going forward, and hopefully we can touch base again later in the year, and preview some playoff games.
Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks for covering.
All right, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you,
That's Coach
Coach.
Redetzke from Durand, and the Panthers, who up until this week were ranked in D4 in the state. A few more wins, and they should find themselves right back up in there.